In case you guys are new, I made a video around a couple of months ago talking about the worst Bakugan Pro cards from each set, but I haven't talked about any of the Bakugan themselves. So this video, we're looking at the worst Bakugan to use in the TCG. I'm going off of one Bakugan per set, so if there's someone worse than what I have shown, let me know in the comments. Starting off with the Bakugan representing the Battle Brawlers card set, we have Aquos Core Trox. This is an example of a Damage Wins Bakugan with the wrong core lineup. Magic Shield and Shield is good, but given its B power, you might want to use a Bakugan with high B power and 2 Fire Fists, like Darkus Platinum Blitz Fox for example, to ally with it, but I'd recommend Pyrus Sectinoid or Darkus Matrix EV instead of Trox. It also has a 1-cost Evo that bumps up the B power by 200. 1050 ain't bad, but that still matches him with Bakugan in base form. For example, his Evo is outclassed by Aquos Magician Kubo, who has a better core lineup for damage wins and can fight for himself with 500 base without an Evo. As much as I hate Kubo, I have to admit that it is better than this Trox. An honorable mention I would like to add is Pyrus Core Ultra. Its core lineup is good, but its stat line is just abysmal! The only reason I'm including him as an honorable mention is his Evo being one of the best in the game. And because of his faction, he has access to Super Fuel and Song of Fire to get it out turn 1. And it also helps in Sacrifice Fury decks. The rep for the worst Bakugan in Resurgence is Pyrus Core Nillious. With 100 B power and 3 damage alongside one of the worst core lineups in the game, you can obviously see why he's here. You can't even use Double Strike properly without another Bakugan's Fire Fist. And even then you're at like 9 damage, so you can't even use it for damage wins. It had an Evo in Age of Aurelus, which allows you to pay 3 to match Bakugan from Armored Alliance with Double Strike now. And those Bakugan from Armored Alliance do not need an Evo to reach that Nillious' stats. Age of Aurelus has one of the worst Victor card effects to ever come from a Bakugan, and it's giving your opponent the option to energize a card from their hand. Ventus Pandoxx Ultra does have good stats, but it's all brought down to its bad core lineup and the worst Victor effect in the game. And we also have a Bakugan tying it, which is Core Aurelus Phaedrus, giving you the worst card pool in the game, the worst core lineup in the game, 101 base, and its effect barely helps you. 750 B and 8 damage. And if you go for full damage, you're looking at 609, which again, some Bakugan have without needing cores. Aurelus Fade Ninja has the same problems, but with better stats and a better core lineup, making it the opposite of this landfill and a perfect honorable mention. Armored Elite had a lot of character cards, obviously marking a new era for Bakugan. There were a bunch of candidates here, but I gotta bring it to Pyrus Ryerazu. Now for him, and maybe a few select others, we will be looking at their epic character cards. So while his serial number and set icon states he's from Fusion Force, the toy originally released under the Armored Elite set, so therefore he counts as an Armored Elite Bakugan. Pyrus Ryerazu may not seem as bad as other Bakugan on the set, but it's got some of the issues Pyrus Nillious BR had: bad core lineup, bad base damage, and bad double strike utility. Only here his double strike is locked behind a Baku Gear, and it's most likely going to ruin your strat thanks to Ventus Shred and Washed Away. Fusion Forces rep is our first Fusion Bakugan on the list, Aurelus Ventus Trox X Sairus. It's got some similar issues to both Trox and Phaedrus from earlier. Bad card accessibility, bad stats, good core lineup, and its fuse side is just too expensive to get out with stats like these. The fuse side is basically the unfused side multiplied by 10, and for a 5 cost it's not even worth it. Just use a Bakugan like Chaos Nillious X Enoch. 606 wasn't bad for an Armored Alliance Bakugan. It's extremely cheap, and you're at 1407 for a 2 cost. And don't worry if you lose a core because you got core manipulation from its base faction. Shields of Vestroia has a lot of fusion Bakugan, but it also has a very obvious pick. Aquos Aurelus Sabra X Pyravian has some very similar issues to the other Bakugan you see here, relying on other cores because of its bad core lineup. However, even if you core share, you'll notice that it was released 1 year later than it should release. It released in a meta where Aquos Core Hydorix dominates, and in that meta, he brings nothing to the table. I haven't even talked about his worst aspect. The game expects us to win a match with this thing and lock the fuse side behind a 50-50. It also gives you 1105 in terms of base stats. Just use a regular character card, and even then you have better options. Like I keep saying about Gen 3, I don't want gambling in my Bakugan! Seekers of the Geogan didn't have a full release. Okay, I'll get to it. It's Pyrus Nillious Ultra. It has a very similar problem to Sabra, being that it was released 2 years late this time around, but this time he barely makes the cut for Might Mac. I think this guy was made for double coring because if he picks up 2 Fire Fists, he's at 16 damage, making him weaker against core manipulation. It does have a Victor effect, but you're never going to get that effect with his stats. Pyrus Cycloid LE has the same faction, but doesn't even need a double core to exceed him, as he's at 20 base damage. And if you bring Myosinius into this, the comparison becomes 17 damage versus 21. So Cycloid doesn't even need a Victor effect to be viable given what he can reach turn 1. GG is kinda where power creep began, but let's talk about Aurelus Oxidox. On paper, it might seem viable because of its core lineup, stats, and Victor effect, but then it gives you the worst card pool in the game, and there's no such thing as plus 100 for Aurelus, so he's only at 1000 B on his own cores, meaning he has to rely on other Bakugan to get the magic shield bonus. As an honorable mention, we have Ventus Behemoth, worst core lineup in the game, but he can actually utilize it thanks to having 9 base damage and Shadow Strike, meaning he's at 12 on a plus 3 Green Fist, and you can utilize Stone Blade fairly easy with it. EV and EV2 are very similar, so I'm just going to group up 2 Bakugan together, and they are Aquos Colossus and Pyrus Dragonoid Evo. The reason I grouped them together is because they're both the same Bakugan, just in different factions, and even though they also have core removal, they're still weak to their own core removal abilities. And for LE, we have an honorable mention in Aquos Centipede for being the exact same as Colossus and Drago Evo. But the real worst Bakugan in that set is Mythic Nillious! He has 2 Helix cores and a base stat of 205. He can remove a core on Helix, which is fine I guess, but he can also reach Might Mac numbers as well. But if you do that, you're left with 0 B power! Core removal can also be easily countered by rerolls, and given its faction, it's better to run it with a Pyrus Bakugan for quickfire and super fuel access. That should be it. Let me know in the comments if you find worse Bakugan than the ones shown here. I'll update the video with your responses.